Hey y'all, welcome into Jewel School. My name is Laura and today we will be learning a double wrap hoop earring. So today we're making this double wrap hoop earring, and this is one of my favorite earring designs that I have come up with. It's really easy and you guys are gonna love it. I really love working with small beads. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I love teeny little beads and I love making a big impact with small things. To me, that takes thought, that takes creativity to make a big impact. It's easy to make an impact with a big bead, but how are you gonna do it with small beads? And this is one example of how I tackled that challenge. So I am going to be using these glass crystal beads that I am obsessed with. They're very uniform, they have really bright color, great for spring and summer, and we're kind of headed in that direction, so this is going to give you some great options. One thing I love about these two is the drill hole in these. It's fantastic, it's really uniform. Sometimes that can get kind of funky when we get in these really small beads. I also am going to be using these 3 to 4 millimeter gold beads. Or gold tone beads. And another thing that I'm obsessed with, this is something that we hoard at JTV. We all have our little stashes of these gold beads because we don't always have them in stock, and we finally do, and I love them. They're great for that little pop of metal that you need sometimes. Sometimes you just need a little something else, something extra in your pieces, and a little metallic bead goes a long way. And I just loved the look of a full row of those gold beads and then a full row of my crystal beads. So let's go over the tools and supplies that we're going to need for this project. Our one-step looper, a flush cutter, a chain nose plier, some 28 or 26 gauge wire, memory wire, a French hook ear wire, a quick link or a closed jump ring, our 3 millimeter gold beads, and our glass crystal beads. All right, y'all, let's get started. First thing that we are going to do is we are going to cut our memory wire. One of the things I love about this project is that you can make it your own. You can make your hoops whatever size you want to do, but you need to kind of have that decided on the front end because we're going to make both of these together at the same time, and then the size of your earring is going to be determined on the size of the memory wire you cut. So I'm going to cut myself 2 pieces of memory wire, and then we'll kind of decide on the size that we want it to be. So for me, this is a little too big on sizing, but so I'm gonna cut a little bit off. I'm gonna trim them down so that they're, a little bit smaller and don't take up too much room or aren't too heavy. That's another thing that I like to think about when I'm designing my earrings is how heavy are they gonna be on the ear. So I'm just gonna give these a little trim. Actually, I'm going to trim this other side because they're not uniform in size. But I don't worry about like measuring too much or anything at this point because I'm doing them both at the same time, so I don't need to worry about making the second one exactly the same size because I'm doing them at the same time, so they're going to be the same size. So I'm going to see kind of what this looks like. Still a little, maybe a little bit big, but we are going to need some room to make our loops. So your loops are going to take up about a little less than 1/4 of an inch, depending on which size one-step looper you use, but just try to remember to account for that when you're considering the size of these memory wire loops that you make, that you're going to lose some of that size when you make your loops. So I think I'm going to stick with this size, and then we will start making our loops, and they're exactly the same size. So I know that once I make my loops and once I pull them together, that my finished hoops should be exactly the same size too. So one at a time, we are going to make our loops with our one-step looper at the top of our earring. And I want my loops to be parallel to my hoop. So I want my hoops, I don't want the loop that I make to go this way. I want it to go this way, kind of around. You'll see when I do it, but it's going to make a difference in how your memory wire connects to your quick link or your open jump ring. So I'm just gonna slide this into my one-step looper, and I'm not going to worry about trying to feed it through the loop on the other side of the one-step looper. I'm just gonna give it a quick cut right there, and then see how this is parallel to the rest of the wire. That's how the direction that we want our loop going. So then I'm gonna flip it around and do it on the other side. Give it a little snip. And again, you'll just do the same thing with this other piece of memory wire here. Everything we do on this one, you will duplicate again on the other earring. So like, we do the initial steps with the wire together so that we can get the right size, and then everything else you can kind of do separately. Okay, so now that we have our two pieces of memory wire cut, we can start making our loops and stringing our beads. We want our loops to be parallel to the rest of the memory wire, so we just need to pay attention to the direction that we're cutting our loops with our one-step looper. It's going to impact how you attach this memory wire to that jump ring or that quick link up at the top. So I'm going to slide the first side of my memory wire in here. Like this. Give it a little snap, and then we've got a closed loop, right? Well, not totally closed, but pretty close. And I can just squeeze that all the way shut with my chain nose pliers. And if you can see that my loop is kind of on the same plane as my memory wire. It's not like standing up in like the perpendicular direction. So now the next thing that we are going to do before we make our loop on the other side is to string our gold beads, all of our gold beads, onto our memory wire. So we will take a second and do that. Again, these gold beads are fantastic. They're not hollow, which makes stringing them really easy. So I don't know if any of you have tried to string hollow beads, but it can be kind of hard to get your wire through it because it gets lost in the cavity inside the bead. But these have a wall on the inside, making them really easy to string and easy on your eyes. So we will just continue to string this until we get this memory wire pretty full of the beads, and I'll show you how much room we need to have left when we're done stringing. Okay, so now that we have all of our gold beads strung, I want you to look at the amount of space that I have left on my memory wire. I would say it's about, let's see, it's about a ½ inch. A ½ inch is a good amount of space to be able to make your loop, and we also want to leave a little space for our wire wrapping so that our gold beads don't get too tight when we're wire wrapping those crystal beads on the outside. So then again, we're going to make a loop with our one-step looper, same direction as the other loop that we did. Okay, so I've got my loop, my other loop made, and before I close it off, I want to attach one of my quick links here. So we're going to pull this all up into a little loop before we start wire wrapping our crystal beads on. So just get this quick link in there and then give that a little pinch, close that loop up. And now we're going to open the other side and attach the other side to our quick link. Open that up. Grab your quick link. Then we will close this loop up and we are ready to start wrapping. Okay, so we are ready to start wrapping our crystal beads onto the outside of our gold core that we've created with those gold beads. And I'm gonna be using 26 gauge wire. You can use 28 if you want, whatever whatever you like working with the best. To me, 26 gauge has just a little bit more, is just a little bit sturdier and has a little bit more strength to it. So I feel a little bit more secure using 26 gauge when I have it. It's pretty hard to find. We have a couple wire kits on jtv.com that have 26 gauge wire in the kit. So anytime I see a kit or anything that has 26 gauge wire, I grab it because it's really a great step up from 28 gauge if you're nervous about the stability of your piece. And it's thin enough to where you can really get some really tight, clean, neat wire wraps and maintain that security. So I have got a couple feet of 26 gauge wire cut. I like to cut a little bit extra when I'm doing wire wrapping. Any type of wire wrapping that I'm doing, I like to give myself a little bit extra because I like to have enough to kind of wrap around my fingers to pull on to get really tight wraps. And so that's why I'll cut a little bit extra. I always recycle my extra wire that I cut and use it again so that I'm not wasting any wire, especially 26 gauge wire. I'm going to reuse it anywhere that I can. So that's why I cut myself a little bit extra. This is about 3 feet of wire. You could probably get away with 2. And also that depends on what size loops you made. The smaller the loop, the less wire you're gonna need to wire wrap the outside of it. So let's get started. You can start on any side of your loop, doesn't matter. But see how I've got a little gap there in my wire? We're gonna lose that gap. Our beads are gonna kind of spread out as we wire wrap and as we tuck this 26 gauge wire down in between the beads. So it's not going to, our finished product is not gonna have a huge gap of memory wire showing through it. But this also gives us enough room to get a nice wrap going on the front side or on the beginning side. So my initial wraps, I like to do at least 3 wraps around my memory wire. And again, making sure that I'm getting them nice and tight so that they're not sliding around. Sometimes, you know, they're gonna move, especially on something as like polished as memory wire. Your wraps might move around a little bit, but once we get this fully wrapped, everything's gonna stabilize out. So at least 3 wraps. To get us started there. And then one thing that I like to do anytime I'm wire wrapping with wire is to pull any slack out of the wire after I'm done wrapping. So I will leave this tail on so that I can go back in when I'm finished, and I will grab down at the base of my wire and I'll stabilize my piece with my fingers, and then I will just roll this piece of wire and just continue to roll it until it pulls all the slack out. And usually I roll it until I break the wire, and that's a great indicator that you have pulled as much slack out as you can get. Like that. And then I'll just tuck that tail down in there. Make sure it's not poking out anywhere. You can grab your hair, can grab onto your clothes. So I always make sure I'm going in with my chain nose pliers and tucking my tails. You guys, if you are short on tools or low on tools, we have one of the things that Jewel School is known for is our tools, the quality of our tools. We have a ton of really great tools. We've got a Jewel School approved or Jewel School stamped set of tools that has pretty much everything that you need to get started making jewelry. And it's got all the pliers that you need. It's got the trifecta, which is chain nose, round nose, and a flush cutter. And it's got some of your specialty tools in it too. So check out our tools on Jewel School if you haven't had a chance. If you know a friend that wants to get started, maybe you have all your tools, but you've got a friend or a daughter or granddaughter who you want to make jewelry with, grab them some tools and some beads and some supplies from Jewel School and get yourself a beading buddy. Okay, so now I am going to start stringing my crystal beads onto my 26 gauge wire. I don't know. I could count and find out how many beads, how many crystal beads I need based on how many gold beads I've used, but I usually just eyeball it, and if I've strung too many beads, I just, you know, when I cut the wire at the end, I just, you know, grab those beads and save them for another project. But I usually try to like string too many, that way I'm not having to go back later and add more beads, but sometimes I have to do that. And again, with the drill holes on these beads, you guys, very easy to see. Sometimes with, you know, the gemstone beads, it can be hard to find the hole to get your wire in, and I will spend more time trying to find the hole than I'm actually spending doing any wire wrapping or anything like that. This is not the case with these beads. I can very clearly see my drill hole, and I'm not fishing around trying to find it. I'm gonna cut a little of the string off just to get it out of my way and kind of speed up my process a little bit. So one tip that I love to share with people when we're using really small beads or restringing a lot of beads is I will straighten my string of beads down and kind of tighten them down on the string that they came on, and I will go in with my finger and my forefinger and my thumb, and I will grab a section. It's usually about 1 to 1.5 inches of beads, and I'll slide them very carefully off of that strand, and I will, without moving my beads or releasing the tension between my fingers, I will string those beads right through that little section in one fell swoop, and I'm not wasting time trying to string a bunch of beads over and over again. So that really helps speed up the process if you're stringing a lot of beads at one time. Okay, so I think I've got close to the right amount. We'll see how close I get to the right amount of beads. I'm going to just make myself a little curly cue down here at the end of my wire so that my lavender or purple beads don't fall off. Isn't this the best color, purple? I'm not a huge purple person, but when it's got that dusty undertone to it, I love it. There's something really it's got a calming feeling. I've got a shirt on that has it too, so I'm feeling that color lately. But that dusty purple that's not in your face is the purple I gravitate towards. But it's a great for spring, summer, the seasons we've got coming up. Okay, so I don't need those anymore. All right, we are ready to start wrapping. So I'm going to wrap my beads, my lavender beads, on the outside of my gold beads. They're probably going to want to tilt towards the inside of the beads, but I just, make sure I'm going along with my thumb and using my thumb to stabilize my wrap and to keep my bead up on the top of my gold beads here. So I'm going to slide a gold bead down, one gold bead first, and then we're going to wire wrap right around that gold bead. So I want my lavender bead to kind of sit in between the two gold beads, but it's going to look a little wonky at first because we've got so much slack in between our gold beads right now. But as we continue around the earring, the beads will kind of settle into those grooves between the gold beads. So I just went one time around my memory wire with my 26 gauge wire here, and I just got my next gold bead pushed up next to the one before it, and then I will drop a lavender bead down. Make sure I'm keeping everybody nice and tight with my fingers, stabilizing that lavender bead and keeping it on the outside of my row of gold beads, and I'm going to come around with my wire and slide another gold bead down there like this. And we're just going to continue this all the way around the earring until we have wrapped our last lavender bead around our last gold bead. So the key to keeping this neat at the beginning is stabilizing the whole section with your fingers, because these are going to want to spread apart, and that's going to it's gonna pull your wire apart, and that's gonna create extra slack in your wire. That's gonna kind of look different. So your first section will look different from your last section of wire if we're not keeping these stabilized throughout the whole process. So then sliding another gold bead down there. And drop a lavender bead. And then bringing my gold bead down, wrapping my wire, and sliding a gold bead. Now, see how I'm trying to keep all these lavender beads somewhat in between my gold beads. That way they kind of nestle in, and I don't want big gaps between the gold and the lavender beads, because that's a perfect opportunity for something to catch in that gap, and it could kind of pull your whole earring apart. So keeping those lavender beads and those gold beads stacked right on top of each other really tightly is going to help the overall security of your piece, and kind of safeguard it from any breakdown in your craftsmanship later on down the road. So I'm just going to continue wrapping these, and y'all take a second to shop and check out jtv.com if you haven't yet. Okay, so I've gotten about, like a third of the way around, and if you can see, I have taken up a lot of that space that we had between our gold beads. So I've got just a little bit left. So this is going to continue to get tighter and tighter the further we wrap. And you're not going to have to worry about kind of stabilizing your beads as much. Once we eliminate that slack, you can kind of relax that other hand and continue to wrap around your earring. Okay guys, so I have got all of my lavender crystal beads wrapped, and I'm ready to finish off this wrap section. So I'm just going to bring my 26 gauge wire around my last gold bead here, and we're just gonna wrap it around our little, oops, I went the wrong direction. Okay, we're gonna come this way with our lavender bead, and now I'm gonna come this way. And we're just gonna give this a couple wraps around that little loop section of our memory wire here. And I'm gonna do the same thing again, where I'm gonna pull as much slack out as I can with my pliers. So I've got my wraps, and I'm gonna grab my wire down there right at the base and stabilize my piece with my hand, and then just twist and twist. And I don't know if you can see the end of that wire, but I pulled quite a bit of slack out of there just by doing that twist motion, and that kind of tightens up that wrap really nicely so we don't have any loosening in that area. Tuck my tail in, and we are ready to attach our ear wire. So I used a French hook. You can use whatever ear wire you like. If you like the huggy style, if you like lever back, if you like post, you can use any style that you want. I just had these, so I use these. So I am going to, so they come closed like this. And now I'm gonna go in with my chain nose pliers and open that loop up. So when we're opening these loops up, we always wanna tilt, and we don't wanna pull apart like that, because you're gonna deform that loop and you'll never get it back into a nice circle. So if you twist with your pliers or tilt, like rock back and forth, that's the best way to open a loop on your ear wires or a jump ring, pretty much any kind of loop when it comes to making jewelry. Close that back up with my pliers, and we are done. See, nothing to it. All right, so let's go back over the tools and supplies that we used for this project. We used our one-step looper, a chain nose plier, a flush cutter, some 26 gauge wire, you can use 28 if you have it, our bracelet memory wire, our crystal 3mm beads and our 3mm gold tone beads. Do you want to see more projects using small beads to make a big impact? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks, guys.